Hi, welcome to Author Straight Talk with Sarah Gertis. My name is Chuck, that is Sarah, and on today's edition of Author Straight Talk, we're going to talk about a couple of things. Writer's block, we'll get to that in a minute, but first, inspiration. And there you are with snow in the background, and I'm feeling so inspired already, Sarah.
Aren't you? And by the way, isn't this just the image that the successful writers,
Yeah.
they live on a beach or they are able to write when it's just snow covered? They have this perfect world, because I know I grew up thinking that that's the idyllic space that all authors had.
Yeah.
And I was soon to learn at the ripe old age of 27, that is far from the truth. So inspiration comes from a lot of different things, and there's tons of books on inspiration. And so I'm going to try and be a little different. I'm going to tell you what actually I found in my life for inspiration. The best ideas come from true life, conversations that you have, events that you observe. I have found a lot of inspiration comes from hardships, interestingly enough, because they give you a different perspective on things. Quite a few authors, such as Stephanie Meyer, identify dreams as a source of inspiration. So wherever you're looking, you can see something that is intriguing, a character on a boat, somebody on a plane. I find travel is probably the fifth primary category. The other four I named, but the fifth category would be travel and observing new, unique environments and people. So those are five right there for you: conversations, people, places, travel, and hardships and dreams. So I guess that's six.
So as a man, if I put on a cardigan and smoke a pipe, that isn't going to necessarily just do
You
it for me?
too. Yes, you too could end up in one of my books. Actually, I will give you an example. I was on a ferry from Seattle to Bainbridge Island one time, and I was by myself. I wanted a day trip. So I get in my car and I go up to one of the top decks, and I see this guy, and he is walking in this kind of oil Australian coat, the kind that cowboys wear. And he had this hat on, he had gorgeous leather boots. And I didn't even really look at his face, but I looked at his outfit, and it was very unique and it was very international, to be quite honest with you. And right before then, all the cars have to go through these bomb sniffing exercises with the dogs. So, and by the way, that was when pot was just legalized in Washington State. And so that actually became an idea for a character in a book that I just referenced. You have somebody coming over, he's going to do, a deal with over on Bainbridge, because they do a lot of, pot growing over there.
Mhm.
and that person, that anonymous man, made it into my book.
And he doesn't even know it. You don't have any idea who it
He
was.
doesn't know that actually he is in an industry that used to be illicit and now is fully legal.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
he was a person. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Well, I think your point, though, is you got yourself in a unique and different environment than your normal day to day. And that's really where it came from, right?
That's right. And in fact, in Author Straight Talk, my book on authoring, the business of authoring, I talk about inspiration and how you kind of hit a wall. It's called writer's block. And for whatever reason, if you're not creating, you've stopped. So he talks about the environment. And if your environment is always the same, it starts to become stale and you become less creative. And so there's the physical environment and there's the mental environment. So sometimes, you do need to come, and, it does snow a lot here in Idaho, my newfound home. So that is lovely, but I will tell you that that's only half of it. The other half is mental.
Yeah, and I think that comes from, again, sometimes removing yourself from a particular place, putting yourself in a different environment, but also the internal part of just letting go of all of the things that life kind of throws at us, right? The stress, the kids, the job, all the things, right?
Actually, Chuck, if you're going to give me some advice on how to let go of that kind of, you feel free, because
We'll do that on my own video series.
I am the unwashed masses. I'm a mere mortal. I cannot let go of all of those things, and I have to write anyway. Part of the mental element of writing is continuing to write. Ray Bradbury famously said that you only fail if you stop writing. Writer's block, to me, and I use this analogy in my book, it's like a pilot in a stall. The plane is going down, you've stalled, you've creatively stalled. And yet that pilot doesn't just throw up his hands and say, okay, well, I'm done. I'm just, going to meet my maker. That pilot keeps working, keeps flying the plane to get it going again, pulls him or herself out of that stall. That is a really great analogy for writer's block, because you need to keep writing. Now, what you write during that time might be crap. It might be less than stellar, but through that process, you can have breakthroughs that will factor into other projects or other elements. So, physically, can you change your environment? If you live in an apartment or you're on a plane, you can't always do that, but you can certainly change your mental environment.
And give me a really easy way to do that. Well, like, what's the simple thing that I can do right now in order to change
Right now,
that? Yes.
okay, so I hope this doesn't embarrass me for my kids, and my posterity. But I honestly, I will change my clothes. I will change my hairstyle. When I'm writing a nonfiction book, I go to my kitchen table because I find my office too antiseptic. So I go to my kitchen table. I put on classical music. I use my favorite pen. But I am wearing actual business clothes. I'm on the phone. I'm interviewing people, and I am in that mindset. When I go to write my women's fiction genre, I literally put on my jewelry. I think I wear red lipstick. I don't know. I put on this great chill music out of Europe because it gets me in a zone that is totally different. Now, when I'm writing my action adventure series on Chambers, I put on my hardcore trance music. I am wearing jeans. I am in a different place in the house. I'm probably on the deck or in my living room. My state of mind is completely different for those three genres that I work within.
So I'm assuming in the book, Author Straight Talk, that's coming out, you kind of address some of those practical ways and really address how to overcome the issue that apparently all writers go through, right?
Yeah, nobody's at the top of their game all the time. You have a player in professional levels, they're not always going to have their A game on. And it's no different from an author or a singer. We all have to take a break. And there are techniques that you can use. I actually have a book that I mentioned. I mentioned not a lot of resources, but one of them is 100 Days of Creative Writing that was given to me a dozen years ago. And it has ideas. Every page is an exercise to get you crisp again, to get you thinking about something in a different way. There is a technique called creating an author promise. An author promises who you are going to be to your readers. And if you stop, and I go into that exercise in the book, but your promise to your readers that you're never going to break. If you're an author of suspense and you're going to make sure that, your hero always comes out on top, that is the promise you're implicitly making to that reader, so they know what they're getting. If you look at every successful author, and by success I mean just sales of books, they have implicitly given that reader a promise that they are not going to break. So that's another, example of a tip that you can use.
So I know you're writing this book for aspiring authors because there's a lot of information that you've, gleaned on your own. If you could write the younger Sarah, the pre-published, writing her first book, Sarah, when it comes to
The idyllic Sarah.
yes,
Yeah.
the one who is going to change all the world and sell a billion
Right.
books. If you could say
Right.
to that young Sarah, watch out for this when it comes to inspiration, writer's block, and, what would you say to her?
Well, I would say to her, don't be so stubborn. I would say to her that no matter how many books you read on inspiration and tips and techniques, you are eventually going to find what works for you the best. And sometimes that's trial and error. However, one thing you always want to keep with you is a notebook. Now, I say a notebook instead of your phone because I don't know about you, but I've had 5 or 6 phones that just blue screen on me and I've lost all my data, even if I've backed it up. There is something very unique about a notebook that allows you to capture those moments, make notes, and actually then use it later when you're writing your own manuscript. So I would take a notebook with you everywhere you go and whip it out when you're in the doctor's office, you're on the plane, you're on the bus, you're bored in a meeting, whatever it is, because you can use those notes years later.
Great advice from Sarah Gerdes, author of Author Straight Talk, a new book coming out, and subject of this video series. And next time we're going to discuss writing to genres, trends, or yourself. That's next time right here on Author Straight Talk with Sarah Gerdes.